Good morning, and I would like to say thank you and welcome to this training workshop, which is being done in partnership with the GSMA, Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, Bureau of National Communications, and the National Communications Authority. My name is Derek once again, and I'll be your MC throughout the day. We'd like to just start this event, just a few remarks from key stakeholders. We'll do a group photo, and then we can start with the training, and that's what's going to be for the rest of the day. So I'd like to invite the CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, who will do the opening remarks, and then we will continue the event from there. A round of applause, please.
The Deputy Director General for the NCA, Prince Efa, Dulip from the GSMA, and his colleague Kenneth, my namesake. And ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to today's event. It gives me a lot of pleasure that we have brought this day has finally happened. I remember that just when I had left Graphic, the Atomic Junction explosion happened. And I was driving from Cape Coast to Accra, and I was listening to the conversation that was going on. Normally for us in print, we thought that it was traditional media that would steal our lunch, that would lead the conversation. But on this particular occasion, the media that was leading the conversation was not the traditional media. It was neither radio, neither was it TV. You found out that radio was trying to play catch up. It was social media that was dominating the conversation. And unfortunately for you and I, when it comes to citizens-generated journalism, you can be sure that if even we have fake news in the mainstream media, then definitely that one was chaos. So there was a lot of misinformation as much as there was some information as well. There were situations where people who were on the north side of the disaster were escaping rather towards, where the disaster was. So because by then I had finished my conversation with the Telecom Chamber, the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, I was thinking about how I was going to start work. And so I thought that if our members were involved in the disaster management, we could have, based on the fact that we can tell where people are geographically, we could be sending targeted messages to people to say, if you live in Ebri and you've had a disaster, don't start running towards, or if you're in Adenta, don't start running towards Atomic Junction. And then those people who were also now driving against traffic, who could have dealt with it. So I remember sending some messages to the CEOs that could we do a collaboration between ourselves and the various disaster management teams. Then I got in and I realized that GSMA, that is an association of all players within the telecommunication organizations, already had a project like that they were running in other places. So we started the conversation to say, is it possible for this to happen? My very first meeting with the NCA, with the Director General, in our conversation, the Director General said it was a good idea, but we should speak to national security. So we took it on, and then we met with the Minister for National Security. We had various deliberations. He was also accepting of it. And he recommended that we work with the NCA and the Bureau of National Communications. So we engaged with the Bureau of National Communications, and then we brought GSMA in, and we started speaking to our members as well. So this has been like a year plus, where we have been trying to get this to go. And then finally, the GSMA agreed that we would have this workshop. So the whole idea behind this is to be able to get GSMA to share with us learnings from other markets. And because they are here, I will not tell you, they will tell you themselves some of the learnings that have happened. One that Dulep shared with me yesterday was the issue of Mexico. The fact that in Mexico, when there was an earthquake 30 years ago, there was a lot of deaths. And then, nature has a way of repeating itself. Exactly on the 30th anniversary, same day, another earthquake hit again. And this time, because they were prepared, and because of the fact that they had the state actors within the disaster management and preparedness sitting together with the operators, they were able to then deal with the situation, and then the death that happened was very marginal. I am praying that today, as we start and we go through the first day of the learnings, and tomorrow when we engage to start looking at the Ghana plan, which builds on your various expertise as well as that of the operators, we would start a conversation that would lead to building up the digital national disaster preparedness framework for Ghana, and then be able to put together a team that would be able to operate this, to work on the preparedness, to work on the plans that we need to do, the collaborations that we need to do, the simulations that should be happening as we go along, so that when disaster hits, we would not touch wood. Nature is funny and decides that on the 3rd of June, he will throw that again at us. This time, we'll not record anybody dying. Maybe at worst, a few people might have their clothes wet, but nobody will lose his life or anything. That is what we need to be working towards. Because there are a lot of technologies now that are available that we can deploy. But the thing about technology, the thing about systems is that it depends on people. No matter the AIs that will bring, the machine learnings, all the technology, all the robots, you still will need people at the heart of it. So it is all of us sitting in this room, our regulators, those of you who operate within the ecosystem of disaster management, and the operators, and then I think critically also is the media, to be able to sit around the table on a continuous and constant basis, planning to ensure that we prevent these things from happening. If you go back to Graphic and you start reading Graphic from when it was launched till today, it's as if we engineered the disasters to happen. Because if you read in the 50s, some of the things you see today were already or were happening originally, and they keep on happening. So if you study them as an engineer, you can see that this one, they are cycles, they repeat themselves. And unfortunately, we are not changing. I pray that with all the things that all of you are beginning to put together, I had an occasion of working with the ambulance service. Very professional people. So we have pockets of excellence that are spread across. But we are not talking, we are not collaborating. I'm hopeful that once we've begun this, with the ideas that will come from the GSMA, with the knowledge that you people have, and then also with the operators, the technologies that are happening. I was at Barcelona, and some of the technologies that have come for these disaster management, very interesting. There are drones that are flying cell sites, so that if even it is the fact that it's a mudslide that you have and all the cell sites are down, you still will be able to deploy that within the disaster to be able to identify, because anywhere you find a phone, it means there's a person there. So if it was an earthquake and the masts are down and everything, you still will be able to do this. But if that would happen, it's because we have prepared, it's because we have planned, it's because we are talking to each other, so that immediately that happens, we won't have the atomic junction thing again, where it is people leaving their cars, their children in their cars and running off. But it would really be coordinated. To the extent that if even after a disaster, you want to send relief, now it's not just the odd blankets and things. It's even the right information that you want to send. And even if you want to actually give people relief, you want to make sure you give it to the right people. You could use digital financial service. It could be mobile money that would send money to the very people who need it, so that they will be able to access it. So there are a lot of opportunities that are available. I pray that after this, we'll get a lot more other people to come and sit around together with us, so that we can put this thing together. So for us as operators, not only would we be contributing our taxes, not only would we be giving jobs to people, not only would we be giving technologies on which other industries will run, but we'll also be seen to be contributing to the improvement of the lives of the Ghanaian, to ensure that our story so far as disasters and how we respond to them would change. Thank you all very much for coming, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Engineer Kenneth Ashigbe. Speaking about how we can collaborate on little pockets of excellence in our different units so that we can leverage these supports across board, everybody bringing a piece of that puzzle so that we can build a better and resilient disaster management society. You know, 2 years ago, just to lighten up a bit, 2 years ago, I took this program online. And when you do it online, it takes about four to 5 weeks. And Dulip was my instructor. And, you know, I used to think in a certain way until I took the course. And I can assure you that after this day, because it's a day course, but we want to use tomorrow to look at Ghana's own plan and basically make inputs to it. So tomorrow is not going to be a full day like today. But more importantly, I used to think that disaster management was all about bed sheets, blankets, oil, cooking oil, and you know. So we're having a debate online, and we had a statement on radio something 3 weeks ago where some very important personality said that we're preparing for an earthquake, so we're getting together blankets and bed sheets. And so I said, I don't think that's what we should be putting together first. We should be putting together a plan to be able to even predict when the earthquake might possibly come. And then beyond the prediction, be able to talk about evacuation and basically preparing for the disaster, not post-disaster. And so we had this conversation and people were talking about the fact that, oh no, I'm wrong, we need blankets, we need food. So I asked, if I was in a grocery store and there was a collapse on each side of the entrance, or all the exit points were collapsed, and I couldn't go out, do I need food? I'm in a grocery store. All I need is to be able to communicate to somebody outside and be able to get some assurances that maybe stay put, we're going to come for you, and all those. So I believe that that's really the conversation we're trying to have. Being able to move beyond a step of just providing materials to rather now provide information using technology so that we can assure stakeholders and also our citizenry that we have a system in place that basically manages disaster much better than it does currently. I would like to invite the Deputy Director for the National Communications Authority in the person of Mr. Prince Sefa, who is here to give us some key remarks as well. A round of applause for him.
Happy to be here. I'm actually representing my boss, the Director General of the NCA, Mr. Joe Anoche, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. But I'm happy to be here. You know, how else do I get the chance, right? Anyway, I'm here to deliver his remarks. Mr. Chairman is the CEO of the Ghana Telecom Chamber. The lead of the GSMA here, Mr. Dulip. Friends from the GSMA, esteemed colleagues from the NCA and the industry, as well as media. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. I'm happy to join you at the start of this very important course on building capacity towards disaster response. It was just about 3 weeks ago when the Global Emergency Telecommunications Forum, GET-19, was held in Mauritius. The theme of GET-19 was innovating together to save lives using technologies in disaster management, and it highlighted the role of information communications technology, ICT, networks and services in disaster risk reduction and management, as well as saving lives. Indeed, that forum came at a time when the critical role that ICT had been used variously across the world to reduce the impact of disasters. GET-19 also came just a few days after Ghana experienced its latest in a series of earth tremors that had led to the setting up of a presidential committee tasked with refocusing Ghana's preparedness for natural disasters, particularly earthquakes. The NCA's representatives at that committee sitting here today, Mr. Kwame Bachenfor and Kwame Jan, happen also to be our representatives at this course. That speaks volumes of the importance we as a regulator attach to the issue of disaster management and the role of telecommunications that it has to play in the mitigation phase, preparation phase, the response phase, and the recovery phase. Ghana was represented at GET 19 in Mauritius, and the detailed report that was submitted is being studied to hopefully lead into the conversation of a national emergency telecommunications plan for Ghana. As the International Telecommunications Union, ITU, advises, and from the varied experiences and learnings from other countries, we look forward to a number of activities to help prepare ourselves adequately for the future. Mr. Chairman, seeing as there are already existing laws and some agencies established to deal with emergencies, the following to-dos are recommended to position the telecommunications industry at the heart of Ghana's National Emergency Telecommunications Plan. And they go as follows. Number one, the formation of a multi-sector based group to draw the National Telecommunications Emergency Plan for Ghana. Two, identification of the various disasters the nation is exposed to, the areas of impact, measuring the potential of occurrence, and grading them in a plan that will inform the drafting of specific plans for same. Again, with telecommunications at the heart of it. Three, identification of the various ICT tools available to disaster managers and the populace, which will inform data gathering, communication among disaster managers or coordinators, and communication between disaster coordinators or managers and the population based on areas of predicted disasters. Number four, develop specific plans of action with mobile network operators and broadband wireless access operators. We call them MNOs and BWAs, which are geared at specific disasters. Five, assessment of existing ICT tools of the state in disaster management. Six, the drawing of specific plans for particular identified disasters that should include the identification of specific ICT interventions in the preparation phase, warning phase, response phase, and the recovery phase as contained in the ITU guidelines. Seven, the creation of an early warning system similar to what we have studied from ZICTA, which is the telecommunications regulator in Zambia, and what it has done for communities in flood-prone areas of that country. This, we believe, can be done for communities along the Bagre Dam passageway in Ghana. 8, identification of disaster risks and potential areas that require some sort of early warning systems to reduce impact. 9, the creation of National Emergency Telecommunications Center to coordinate all emergency communications, including links with the ITU and sister agencies for satellite support, etc., if need be. Mr. Chairman, businesses do not exist in disasters, and profit cannot be made when lives are lost and infrastructures are destroyed. It is therefore a brilliant idea, we believe, to have players who would have otherwise been considered competitors undergoing training on disaster management. This way, they will appreciate the need to collaborate and institute appropriate measures that will prove useful during disaster management. Mr. Chairman, indeed, part of the license conditions of MNOs and BWAs clearly state that networks may be used for emergency communications during periods of emergencies. Beyond the law, it is important that we understand that how we can use our services to save lives and societies during and or after emergencies are important. Hopefully, these ideas will come through as the team here discusses these things and are taught as well. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful 2 days of learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seifa, for that very brief key remarks.
Hello, my name is Edmond Obrieboa from ATC Tower, Ghana, and my expectation from this program, I would really want to know fresh insights as to what a tower company coming from a telecommunication tower owning company, how new ideas are going to be, open onto the table, what we can use, the resources we have, the towers we have, how that can help in managing disasters. So that is my expectation.
Good morning, I'm Christiana Watima Achena from the National Ambulance Service. I'm a paramedic. My expectation at the end of the program is that we will be able to use technology to guide us in coordinating the response of emergencies when it's okay. Thank you.
My name is Theodore Romano, Chief Superintendent of Ghana Police Service from the Operation Department. As you are all aware, in most emergency cases, the police is the first respondent to act. And my expectation is that I'll learn a lot and disseminate it to the young ones that will be responding to most of these issues. Thank you.
Yeah. My name is Professor Ahmed Zakaria. I'm the CEO of the Ghana Ambulance Service. Obviously, we are into emergency response, and as the title of the course, capacity building, we hope to learn something to add to what we know already. Thank you.
I am Abdul Fattah Hassan. I work with the Regulatory Affairs Department of MTN. I expect that at least at the end of the day, the telecom sector makes the most contribution to the body set up by the President to prepare the national framework for disaster management.
Good morning. My name is Eric Kobla Duho. I'm the manager for business continuity and crisis management at MTN. We have a crisis management process in place, and my expectation is how this will fit into the National Crisis Management Plan at the end of this workshop. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Francis Kamati. I'm Head of Research and Applied Meteorology from the Ghana Meteorological Agency. At the end of this workshop, I'm expecting that I will see and know how I can disseminate my weather forecasts, and then the various ways that it can get to the populace so that we can reduce disasters.
Good morning. I am Kwame Ako, Deputy Superintendent of Immigration. I'm with the IT department. My expectations for this course is that at the end, I'll get to know how best we can use communication tools to disseminate information when emergency crisis occurs. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Elvis Owusu, as Superintendent of Immigration, and I'm with the Communication Unit. I will learn a lot and also teach my other colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ken Okongo from GSMA. I do policy and advocacy, mobile for humanitarian innovation for the sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
And I'm the Deputy CEO or Deputy Administrator for GFEC, Ghana Investment Funds for Electronic Communications. Our mandate, as most of you might be aware, is provision of network services for the underserved and unserved communities of our nation. So my expectation here will be, even though we manage the rural networks, we stay aligned with the major telcos, and I'll be expecting what role we can play as providers of networks for the rural communities, what role we can play when there's an emergency, and also combining all the expectations of everyone here.
Good morning. My name is Kwesi Inkansedra, and I'm from the Bureau of National Communications. My expectations are that maybe at the end of this program, all stakeholders will first of all understand and be able to work together to evolve the necessary strategies based on which we can work to implement systems that will make Ghana ready in case there is a disaster. Thank you.
My name is Jackson Ejafon, Deputy Superintendent of Prisons, Deputy Head ICT Unit. My expectation is to know about, after this workshop, is to know about the technologies and tools which are available in disaster management, and also to be able to apply such knowledge of the technologies in managing emergencies in the prisons.
I am Samson Gunu, Assistant Director of Prisons. My expectation is I want to add, prison is a town itself on its own. So in case of any emergency, what we will do before the general people will come and help. I think that's what I'll add to what I know already. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kwame Jan. I work with the NCA. Over the past few weeks, I've had to pick a lot of learnings in emergency telecommunications. And I'm happy to have Ken here to also add up to this knowledge. So I hope that we can together, as Ken mentioned, piece all the various things that are required. The thing is that because those of us in this past are not used to some of these emergencies, we think that it's just far away from us. Mozambique didn't think so until 2 weeks ago. They knew the storm was coming. When it hit them, they were overwhelmed by it. And the best we can do is to get ready for it. And in this day and age when technology is so much available and useful, I hope we can piece together all the various things we have and then have some good plan that will be helpful for Ghana as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Kwame Bechamfo. I work for National Communication Authority. Kwame is my colleague and he speaks for the NCA, so that expectation is aligned.
My name is Major George Idia. I am the Assistant Computer Programming. I'm from the Defense Communications and Information Systems of the General Headquarters, Ghana Armed Forces. Our role and my expectation is very simple. Is to know our role in your plan and how we could disseminate this to our members during the implementation stage. And so ours is generally to know our role in your plan. Thank you.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Vera Kwe, coming from the same department with my colleague. Same expectations. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Maureen Ahelegbe. I'm with National Security. Basically, my expectations for coming here today is to learn more about how or what role that national security will play in response to disaster and humanitarian crisis. So basically, that's it.
My name is Emmanuel Aga, also from National Security. My expectation is the effective collaboration of all the agencies here after we are done. Thank you.
I'm Keita Sari, National Security. We are on the same line.
Osek Fuajiman, Bureau of National Communications. My expectations are also the same as everybody.
My name is George Keteku from Food and Drugs Authority. I'm expecting to know the role my organization would play in responding to disaster crisis after this meeting or this program.
I'm Sule Joti, Information Services Department. My expectation is that stakeholders will be able to network and communicate disaster effectively.
So my name is Dulip Tilakaratne. Don't try to pronounce my second name. First name may be okay. It's like the flower tulip, right? But with a D, so it's Dulip, right? So second name, you're lucky. I have a short second name. There is a, do you guys like cricket? No, right? There's a cricketer from Sri Lanka. His name is Warnakula Surya Patabendige Ushanta Joseph Chamindavas. Yeah, so you're lucky. I only have a short second name, which is Tilakaratne. So anyway, I'm from the GSMA M4H team. M4H stands for Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation, and we work with mobile operators across the world to see how mobiles can play a role in humanitarian assistance, right? So it can be for both kind of disaster situations. It can be a sudden onset disaster or a natural disaster, as you call it, or it can be a protracted crisis or a man-made crisis, as we call it. Right? So some of my colleagues are currently working in this part of the world, mainly in, say, Rwanda, Uganda, and also in Somaliland at the moment with some of the refugee populations, and also in Jordan with the Syrian refugees, mainly to understand that kind of context. So myself, I'm more involved in the Asia-Pacific region since I'm from Sri Lanka, but also involved in some of the disaster response and preparedness work that mobile industry is doing. So that's a very quick introduction about my day job. So this capacity building course is specifically run by GSMA for this kind of purposes, and today I'm very happy to see a very wide audience and a very relevant audience with a lot of takeaways in mind. Right, so I was listening to listing them down. So a lot of takeaways. So I hope that we managed to cover most of it. But I think more than us covering, what you have to take back from today and tomorrow is mainly what we can do for Ghana in the current context, and how we can work together in our emergency telecom space, and what would each of your role be in that space, and how you're going to be connected to the mobile operators, to the other telecom or communication service providers, and all the other stakeholders. So that's the question that we are broadly going to answer. So I will just stop a moment because Ken had a very short introduction, so just about your role and what you do, Ken, before we start, and we can go ahead.
Thank you, Dulup. Once again, good morning. I'm Ken Okongo, and I also do policy and advocacy, mobile for humanitarian innovation. I also cover digital identity, and majorly I focus on sub-Saharan Africa. First of all, I'd want to say that I'm happy to be here. This is the third time I'm coming here. Earlier, I came here and visited GIFEC, and that was on a benchmarking tour when I was working for Universal Service Fund in Kenya. I'm also happy to have met people we met in GET 19 in Mauritius, and I'm happy actually that it's an area of focus even for Ghana. One thing that I would want to mention at this point is that my expectations are like yours. We are not really experts in this, and so it's just sharing experiences for the areas we have visibilities in, and also you also sharing with us so that we also share with other member countries that we operate in. Otherwise, up to that point, I'd want just to encourage that let's have it as interactive as possible. We engage one another, and then we learn, we share, and at the end of the day, we make the world a better place to live in. Thank you.
Okay, so one way is, let's say I have seen in forums when we share some of the examples, we can look at it from a very pointing finger way, right? You know what I mean? Because there is a very famous professor in Sri Lanka who does workshops on positive thinking. So he goes to forums like, let's say, universities where there's clashes between staff and students. So he goes and delivers lectures on positive thinking. And after the lecture, the staff members come to him and say, "Sir, that was fantastic. You gave the students a really good whacking. That was really good. Your examples were really hitting them hard." And then after he walks out, the students come in and say, "Sir, that was really fantastic. The staff members got a really good kick out of it. You hit them right on the head." Yeah, but the result is 0, right? Because both thought, it's good that all the faults of theirs were pointed out, or the others thought, okay. So The lesson is we are not going to look at, okay, hey, this we don't have, we are lacking this, yeah, we are doing very bad. No, we are not going on a fault-finding mission. Rather, we are going on a learning mission to say, how did this country do it, or this operator do it, and what were the learnings that they had? Can we adopt it in our context? So that's the kind of point of view that we are trying to have in the course. Right. So as you can see, if 10 years ago I was delivering these kind of sessions, I would never have given the Wi-Fi code. People were like, 15 years ago, they wouldn't even think of internet while sitting in a forum like this. But now, the first thing you walk into a room, do we have Wi-Fi? And connect it, right? See, our lives have changed. Why? Because the information, because the connectivity, because the link that we have to the rest of the world is so important. So that is why when Derek was earlier sharing the example of us preparing, we say information is aid, right? We have experiences where you work with refugee communities, you engage with them. They are willing to give away their food if they can have a SIM or some sort of data connection, right? They don't want food, but they want, so that's how important the connectivity has become today. So because of that, the emergency telecoms and its role to play comes in as a very, very important area. So a quick slide on GSMA. So as you can hear, GSMA is the Global Mobile Association. So we work mainly with about 800 mobile operators across the world, and some of our colleagues are members here. And mainly looking at how the mobile industry can work together, right? So you're lucky because GSMA shouldn't be anything new to you because you have a local GSMA here, right? In the form of the chamber. So you imagine the same role the chamber is playing, you imagine at a global level. So that's what we are doing, if I put it in a very small nutshell. Mobile for Development is our division within GSMA, right? So within GSMA, there are different divisions, divisions that look at taxation. There's a whole part of GSMA that organizes events. So MWC in Barcelona is one of that huge global events that we have. So we have MWCs for Asia Pacific and Americans separately. So there's a team that does that. But M4D is mainly the team that looks at how mobile can play a role in development, right? So mainly targeting towards development and looking at mainly our sustainability development goals in the world at the moment. So you're familiar with that, I'm not going to spend time, but basic idea is how can mobiles play a role with achieving these goals? So there are teams already working in Ghana. There's the MAgri team, right, looking for mobile for agriculture. There's the DI team, digital identity team, Ken mentioned earlier. And also there's the utilities team. There's an ecosystem accelerator team. There's mobile money team, of course. So there are several teams. They are running programs. So our program, M4H, is one of those programs. A few years ago, we were called disaster response. We were only looking at natural disaster situations. But now, with the current situation in the world, we are also looking broader humanitarian crisis. So that's why we are M4H, Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation, rather than, we are just calling ourselves DR, right? So our program has also expanded. Okay, so the first couple of slides is about the course. So what are the objectives of the course? First of all, define what a disaster is, right? And understand the challenges mobile operators have during a disaster. Share good regulatory practices that enable the fast and efficient responses, right? So we are looking at 3 things, but broadly many more. If you narrow it down, we are looking at A, what is a disaster? What is a disaster? And you know, why are we talking about disaster situations? The second one is looking at, okay, if there is a disaster situation, what are the challenges that mobile operators or mobile industry go through? Because if we know those, then we can plan for those to address things that can be responsive, right? Because one of the things that happen is, let's say, if any crisis happens now in this area, we want to call. That's the first thing. We want to call our loved ones and say. But if the connectivity is not there, we will be like, all these mobile operators, they take our money. But when we want connectivity is not there, and we start blaming them. So now in this course, one of the objectives is to understand exactly what they go through in crisis situations. So I will share with Ken some of the examples from different countries, some of the recent disasters where mobile operators really struggle for things that we will never imagine, right? Things that we will think are like granted for us, but you will see what the challenges are and how they go through this, so that you will see from your respective functions where you can come in and help, where you might have expertise that can bring in and support. I'm really glad that we have a wide variety of agencies, organizations that can bring in your expertise to form this committee and move it forward as well. All right, so the agenda, the long agenda. I think you have already got a printout on your tables, yeah? Yeah? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but just to share, so we are in the introduction, right? So that's the first part. And how many slides do you remember? 126, yeah? Yeah, just remember, so when I was in university, the thing that kept me going in lectures and you know, this kind of forums is the knowledge of how many slides are there. And when it comes really, really bad, counting on which slide I am, right? So, in case you're not sure, this is slide number 7. So, yeah, so you can think, oh, it's only 119 to go, right? That you move on, right? But I hope this is not as bad because we haven't even started, right? So, okay, so morning we are doing the introduction and we are talking about preparation, right? So as you can see, there's a large load of content in the morning session, and we are going to spend some time really to sit down and think about preparation, right? What do we talk about when we say preparation? What are the areas? And the 2.12 is mainly looking at national emergency telecoms plans. What is NET plans? National Emergency Telecoms Plans. What are the plans we have? What are the areas that we have to look at? And how do we look at it? What are the considerations that operators have? So we are going to spend some time on that in the morning session. Then we break for lunch, and after lunch session is long, but the slides are shorter. So basically we are going to go through, and late in the afternoon, so when we are really, really tired, we are going to do exercise. Yeah, we are going to do a simulation exercise. Imagine that we are in a crisis situation and see what kind of solutions that you can bring on board. Yeah? Okay, so that's day 1 today, and day 2 we talk about it tomorrow. Yeah? Yeah. And also, so I'm going to also use a little bit of an online tool during the day. So hopefully your phones or your computers are connected. So we need it to see the pulse in the room, the thinking in the room, your ideas in the room, right? So that's the one. So we'll start with the disaster. Yeah. Okay. So what is a disaster? What is a disaster for you, right? So the definition we say is taken from the UN International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, or the UNISDR. You are familiar with this, I hope. It is sudden and calamitous event. You know, suddenly it happens. Second one, it seriously disrupts the functioning of a community or society and causes human and material losses that exceed the community or society's abilities to cope. Even though disasters are often caused by nature, they can also have a human origin, right? So when we say human origin, it can be generated by man, or it can be because of something that is man-made, right? For example, you might have heard about the building collapse in Bangladesh, right? So the building collapsed not because of an earthquake, not because of anything else, because those who made it didn't follow the proper standards in building. So is that a disaster? Yes, it is a disaster. Is it a man-made disaster? Maybe not. We can't call it man-made, but due to the human origin. So that's why we have looked at it from a broader scale of things. Yeah, so good. And yeah, so do we need anything more than what we are seeing across in the world about the disasters happening, increasing in magnitude? Just to give you a figure, the number of disasters that happened in 2017 alone is more than the number of disasters that happened in the 10 years, 2006 to 2016, right? So the loss that was caused in that 10-year period versus the loss that was caused in 2017 is much, much higher. So 2018 has been comparatively calmer compared to 2017. However, we are now here in 2019, started with a very bad experience in the eastern part of Africa. As we speak, there is a response initiative going in Mozambique, where there are more than 500,000 people who have lost their houses. Yesterday I read the record, it's 68,000 houses are completely damaged. And in some of the areas, there's no connectivity. I was speaking to the operator just before when I came here, actually, just to see the coordination, how things are going. So they could only go and see the towers after last Friday. The cyclone happened Monday, but it rained for the entire week. So because of that, they couldn't even go. So that's how bad the situations are, and it's increasing. So it's really good that we are actually thinking about it on preparedness and how we are going to look at it. Okay, so before we come to this slide, I think it's time for us to get a little bit active and get our voices heard here. So we are going to try doing this online tool just for the first time for you to get a hang of it. So on your phones, can you go to www.menti.com, MENTI.com, okay? All right, let me put it on screen so you can find it. Okay, so you can see 50% in the room like Scooby-Doo. So shall we stop this and see a cartoon? Yeah, okay. Based on your view, how prepared is the following for a disaster? So now you have to think of your respective organization, how prepared. So if you see extremely well prepared, you can score higher. Not at all prepared, you can score lower. So there's three things you are asking for. The first is about your respective organization. Second one is mobile industry in Ghana. And the third one is Ghana as a country, right? So this is your view. As I said, this is the pulse in the room to check where you feel we are strong, okay? So when you vote all three, it will come in here. Do we have people with two phones voting twice? Yeah.
We call that overvoting.
Yeah. So, okay. So all good? Anyone else still voting? Okay, let's see what we think in the room. This room thinks that your respective organization is about 5.9. That is how to say, not on the higher side, but over average. Yeah. So we are okay. So individually, your organizations, you feel individually we are okay. Anyone scored 10 for this? Say your organization is 10? No one, right? Okay. Mobile industry in Ghana, below average, 4.9. So you feel as a room that mobile industry in Ghana maybe need to improve on some of the preparedness. Ghana as a country, 3.4. Okay, so you feel as a country we need to be much more coordinated or prepared. So okay, so that is how I summarize the room, yeah? So summarize your thoughts. Basically, you feel your organization, we are proud of it, it's doing good, right? Maybe mobile industry, everyone scores it, so anyway we score it low, right? But the next one is Ghana as a country is something we need to improve. Okay, thank you for your feedback. We go to the next one. Okay, so this one is a typing one. Yes, please. Before we vote, there's a question. Yeah. So, what are the key requests coming your way during a crisis, during a disaster situation? What are the key requests coming in your way? Is it to connect people? Is it to, so there are different organizations, so you can type your answer here, right? So think of emergency telecoms a little bit more than other areas, right? So think of communication, think of people being in touch, think of information, and see in your organization, what are the requests that come your way? What are the things that you want to do during a crisis situation? You have to do, okay? Okay. What is the criteria? Determine a crisis in our organization. I want to get in contact with my family. Needs to secure more resources and build more capacity. How soon will service be restored? Okay, I see that for sure coming from a mobile operator. Yeah, a logistics support and my role. Site recovery. Okay, request for medical response. Will my MNOs be available? Yeah, interesting. Okay, so these are the questions that come your way, right? Information to embassies. How soon will service be restored? That's main question. Yeah. Who to contact in times of crisis? People do not know. How soon are we getting out of this? Periodic status update. Safety zones to coverage. Can be able to help more people whenever there is a disaster. Request for information on current situation. We have not received relief items. Okay, interesting. So you can see there are thousands of information requests. There are thousands of requests coming your way to your respective organization that you are trying to balance and manage. Yeah. One of the key things that we focus is the value of information, right? More than anything else, I think we all want to know what has happened, what is the impact, and how many people have been affected, and what can we do, right? So that information can be if you are not impacted. But if you are impacted, for example, if you are in a crisis situation, what is the information that you would want to know? You would want to know where to go, or where not to go, or how to reach some place, or who to connect. So that is a critical piece of information that everyone would be seeking or asking or looking for, right? So as part of this effort that we are putting up today and tomorrow, if we think of, okay, can we have a better or more coordinated way to manage these requests and have a way to pre-plan them and respond it? I think that's our objective. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of experience when we move into the next slide. So we are going back to what we are going to try and see is, okay, if there's a crisis situation, right? There is an event that happens, right? So I'm sorry that this is not very clear because the letters are too small for you. So I'll read it across so you can see what we can do. So this shows that there is an event that has happened. So because of that, what status are we in is the outside circle. So when you get the slides tomorrow, you will be able to look at it and see. So the event shows that This is the emergencies event, and there's a response that we have to start. And then, after the response, we come into the recovery phase. Then we have the mitigation phase, and we have the preparation phase. So these are the 4 phases of disaster management cycle. And then how do we act in each of these 4 phases? So without going into a lot of detail here, I thought I will share a small experience. 2017 October, we had the worst hurricanes in the Caribbean Ocean, Hurricane Irma and Maria. So Irma struck or started September 6th, Maria struck September 19th. So within 20 days, 2 Category 5 hurricanes struck the Caribbean islands, right? So when it struck, Irma wiped out about 6 islands completely. And then when I say completely, I'm talking about the telco network. And Maria came in, wiped 3 more. So basically about 8, 9 islands were completely washed out of connectivity. And when we say completely wiped out, that is like, I got the report a week after the crisis. They say Digicel and Flow. Digicel says, okay, in Barbuda, we have 11 towers, 11 damaged. So that's 100% damage. So in Dominica, we have 48 towers, out of which 46 damaged. So you can imagine the scale of the damage. So interestingly, there's the example of Puerto Rico was one of these islands, and those of you know, Puerto Rico is a US state, right? Puerto Rico belongs to US. So because of that, what happened is they are run, the operators who are running in Puerto Rico, also US operators. And there was a high amount of media attention to say, guys, let's do something for Puerto Rico. People are struggling. If you look at social media, there are so many stories going up about Puerto Rico. So at that moment, Google Loon, you're familiar with Google Loon? Google has this Loon initiative where they are trying to set up balloons which are positioned in high air, and these balloons are connected so it can link people on the ground, so they see this as a product that can look into connectivity in rural areas. So that's how they started. So in Puerto Rico, they have a Loon office. So they came up to GSMA and said, hey, we want to connect with operators, and can we put up some loons so we connect people who are affected? Fantastic, yeah? So what we did, we connected the operators and said, hey, look here, Loon has come up with this. So the operator also said, yeah, let's look at it. And they started discussing, right? So when we started discussing, right, I tell you, by this time, the entire network is down, right? So operators are running like headless chicken. Loon is also trying to manage. So the conversations took about 2 weeks, going up and down, going up and down. The only thing they needed to do is get a connection to the backhaul of the operator to the loons. That's all they wanted to do. And then it took 2 weeks, and we had calls going, one party asking for a thing, this party asking, another thing. It's going on, it's a nightmare. And finally, we had one call where our Loon team came, one person, the operator came with 21 people in the team on one call, and they are trying to discuss this. Never happened. So finally, we managed to find the internet service provider in Puerto Rico to connect to the loons, and then later another operator managed to connect to the loons, and we got about 60,000, 200,000 people connected to the internet after about 4 weeks. Now, the interesting part is not that. So a year later, last year, July, just before the hurricane season, we got operator and Loon in one room, and they were sharing, oh, this is what we do. And the operators are, That's what you do. That can be done in half an hour. See? They can connect to Loon in half an hour. That's how simple that is. So technology is so simple, it can be solved very easily, but not during crisis situation. So the problem is, we try to solve problems at this stage. After the event, when something has happened, we come up with solutions, hey, can we try this? And this solution becomes so complicated, so challenging. Why? Because before the crisis, we haven't spoken to each other, we don't know each other, they come in, we have mistrust, we think that they are trying to get some marketing coverage out of it. No, we don't want to work like that. So, the simplest of solution takes such a long time. And after the crisis, when we are in peace zone, we are doing mitigation at this time, and we are preparing, then that's the easiest time to work. So I'm glad that we are having this forum in a preparedness zone, right? So we are not responding at the moment to a burning crisis, and so we have time to actually look at each other, actually understand what each other does, and to see, okay, how can we actually work together, yeah? Okay, so these are 3 quotes from very famous individuals, whom I'm sure you know most of them, at least the first one, right? So who have highlighted the importance of communication during crisis situations, right? To say that, so the Ban Ki-moon's statement actually was after we launched the Humanitarian Charter, and the others are also around that. Okay. So, again, if you go back to my objective slide, you remember one of the key things that we are going to highlight today is why are disasters challenging to operators. So, why? Because the design of mobile networks, right? So, mobile network is designed to connect people, yeah? But they are not designed to face a crisis, right? So that's the balancing act operators here in this side have to think of, and the regulators in this side have to think of, right? Because how much of disaster preparedness should we carve into our networks around the country, right? So because if you are running a business and you are trying to manage your bottom line, everything is an expense, right? So you would have to balance out, okay, this is the amount of preparedness that we will have in our towers, in our network. This is the amount of, so we have colleagues from BCM, right? So business continuity plan, in your business continuity plan, this is the amount that we, so how do we balance it? Right? So nowadays in the Caribbean islands, they are discussing about towers which are category 4 resistant. So basically it will manage to stand a category 4. So, but that means that's a higher investment. So how can we invest on that? How can we work on that? So a lot of questions. Second one is the unpredictability of disasters. That's the second one, right? So that's, if we look at it from an artistic point of view, that's also the beauty of it, right? Because, you create something, you come up with an idea and a concept that is, okay, we are prepared, and the disasters find some other way to come around and hit you, yeah? The best example is Japan, right? So Japan, as we know, we talk about Japan, thinking about Japan as, oh, marvelous, their disaster response plans are great, they have so many initiatives. And 2011, when the triple disaster struck, right, the tsunami, the earthquake, and the nuclear station, what happened? They were caught off guard because they never thought that all 3 of these would happen in one area in one go, right? But it happened. So that's the wonder of it. So when a crisis happens, it will always come in an unexpected way, unexpected scale. And so then we also have the mobile industry is a regulated industry. So we have regulated objectives or obligations that we have to meet, and you know, there are good examples which we will share throughout the day from Nepal after the earthquake, and some of the other countries where, you know, the regulator had to play a very flexible role following the disaster to enable the operators to come back and connect people better. And the next one is, of course, lack of available resources. So after a crisis situation, you don't have resources. So where do you get the resources from, right? So again, a Puerto Rico example. So after Maria happened in Puerto Rico, what did the FEMA, the US government agency, what did they do? They came up and said, okay, operators, we know connectivity is important. We give you full access to generators. So you can have generators, they even distributed them. We give you fuel free of charge, or like at a very low rate. So you can have the fuel to your towers. Okay, go ahead, you connect your towers. But what they didn't give is fuel to their vehicles. So you have fuel for your generators, you have fuel, you have generators, you want to go to the area and connect them, but to fuel your vehicles, you have to stand in the line, and the line is 3 kilometers long. So, and you're asking operators, hey, why aren't you connecting? Get your towers on, get your towers. We gave you fuel, we gave you this. But you haven't thought about it in a complete picture, right? So that's also part of our response plan, to think about all the possibilities that might come. That's why we are talking about simulation exercises. Let's do a drill where we take all the possibilities and then address them and then see. So in Philippines nowadays, they are preparing for a 8.0 in Manila. Metro Manila is one of the most populated cities in the world. And then they are saying that there is a risk of an 8.0 earthquake happening. So they did a simulation imagining that there would be an earthquake and how would they respond. So the entire city looking for a drill. In Turkey, they have done a simulation imagining that a lorry with nuclear goods would come and crash into the city center in Ankara. What would happen? And they have done a simulation. So the operator, how to send messages, what to do, what areas to manage, and what kind of situations to address. So all this. So you can see, right? So when these things happen, resources become one of the key challenges. So how can we address that is the next question. Yeah, so as you can see, so here it's a long list of challenges that operators have. So the first one is lack of power. So this is one of the key things that you should know after a crisis situation. We need, mobile industry is very dependent on power. So how are we looking at power? As I said, one example is looking at generators in towers, alternate energy sources, right? So I was working with the mobile operators in Indonesia last year. If you are familiar with some of the crises, Indonesia had a very bad year last year. And one of it was the earthquake in Sulawesi. And because of the Sulawesi earthquake, the tsunami in Palu, right? So the Palu city was completely wiped out by the tsunami. This is not the tsunami that happened after the volcano, which was unheard of. So this was something that happened due to the earthquake, right? So then what happened was, I spoke to the operators. Operators say, hey, no problem, our towers are up. So the tsunami didn't affect our towers. Towers are up. However, what's not there is power. So we have fuel for a day or two. After a day or two, we won't have the ability to go there. So towers will run for 2 days, and then until the power comes back, we can't do anything, right? So as you can see, the dependency on power. Can we do something about it? So the next one is extreme damage to network infrastructure. The other one is road infrastructure, as you know. So some of the towers you might have seen in your country even are in the highest places, in the most rural areas, the towers are there. So your network people have done a marvelous job in putting it up there. However, when a crisis happens, how can you reach there? How can you go there and repair them if there's any damage? So next one. And then additional one, air travel, right? After the hurricanes in the Caribbean islands, most of the airports were closed. So how can you bring aid? How can you bring people? How can you bring engineers to respond? So that's one. And so the next one is fuel shortages. We went in that. Some people, the fiber gets cut or damaged. That's one. There's security risks, security challenges, because people have basic needs. They see mobile operator is going in a vehicle with fuel. When we don't have anything, fuel can be sold. Yay, good opportunity. Bad news. So a lot of risk. So that's why, that's where I think some of the security forces here come in. How can we coordinate with the restoration effort and support the operators in a crisis situation to work on that? So another area. A lack of staff accommodation. So interesting example. Again, sorry, I'm heading like I'm almost finishing my Puerto Rico examples. So in Puerto Rico, after Maria, what happened was we reached out to operators, guys, how is it going? So these are US operators. We are speaking to the operators in the US, and they are saying, everything fine. We have the team here. They are ready. But we can't go to Puerto Rico because we don't have flights. Flights are all booked. Second one, we can't go there because we don't have hotels. So the people who have gone there are in the NOC building, the Network Operations Center building. So we don't have places to stay. So what was GSMA's role at that point? We called hotels and got them rooms to stay so that the engineers can fly, right? So this was one operator. The other operator, when we spoke to them, they said, no problem. Before this happened, we already had an arrangement with the hotel to book few rooms. In case of crisis, they will reserve it for us. So you can see the importance of planning during the peace time to see, okay, we planned it out, so because of that, it went. Yeah. So the next one is critical parts, right? Again, one of the examples, this is from the British Virgin Islands. So after Maria, right? So the guy from British Virgin Islands wrote to us saying, we have some equipment in our towers which are no longer in production, but we need them to restore connectivity. What can we do? So they wrote to GSMA. We spoke to Vodafone in UK, and Vodafone spoke to some of the suppliers. Suppliers went into their stores, got some equipment, find them, but now we have to send it to British Virgin Islands. How can we do that? Luckily, there was one staff member from British Virgin Islands in UK in his holiday. So we reached out to him and said, hey guys, we have this equipment, it's critical. You have to fly back in your checked-in luggage. You take your equipment and take it there to so you can see some things that we never imagined, as I said, would come in. And can we plan for this? Can the operator look at what are the critical parts? How can we make sure that they are prepared? That's the one. Yeah. So, and one of the other things is some disasters can be multi-country, right? So, for example, when floods happen in Nepal, the flood will continue in India because of the border, right? The flood won't come and say, this is India, I won't go. This is a border crossing, I won't go. Flood just goes, right? Especially also important for us in Africa, right? So where we have borders with most countries within, right? So then how can we have some sort of preparedness initiative with the other country close by so that we have some sort of arrangement with them So the operator, I was speaking in Nepal, they wanted to work with the Indian operators so that there is some sort of arrangement. When the alerts go out in Nepal, they can also alert the operator in India so that that can go. So if you have, for example, any disaster that's coming from the close by country, can we have that arrangement with the industry so that the message or alerts that go out come to you also, so you can monitor that in your center. So say, okay, your neighboring country sent out this alert. Is it relevant to us? Can we use it? So again, things that we have to think about. Yeah. So that's why this course we are going to talk about the 3 areas. So the first one is preparedness, second one is response, and the third one we are going to look at it from a recovery aspect, right? Okay, so this is mainly around regulation. Ken, maybe you can, because I've been speaking to you for a long time, and I see that it's getting into a nice lull of sleepiness. So I hand over to Ken for some diversity. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Dulip. Yeah, I wanted to mention something about this slide. As you look at the challenges that we've listed here, you'll realize that it cuts across a number of industries, and not really telecommunication alone. We've got power, which sits in the energy industry. We've got roads. We've got air travel, which is in the air navigation sector. We've got there is immigration, and there is also, when it comes to recovery, as will be mentioned, we also will be talking about aid disbursement and such, which normally happens in form of mobile money. And so that one also sits in the remit of probably central bank, which is a separately regulated industry. And so one thing that I wanted to mention, that even as we talk about regulation, let's look at government generally, how it regulates the sector that we're trying to make a case for, and also the adjacent sectors. And that's why I'll be talking about central bank, the telecom regulator, and even the energy regulation. So, and as Dulip has mentioned, there are a number of considerations in terms of regulations that we'll try to talk about and look at in different phases of disaster response management. So we've been looking at a number of cases across the markets where we've got our members, and there are opportunities and challenges that regulators face. And probably more that we look at are also the enabling environment so that operators and the telecom industry can play a role within disaster management as allowed or as enabled by the regulator in the sector. But there are also challenges that they face that we will look at into details as we go forward. Yes, this is also another area that we look at, and we also see the role of the regulator while carrying out this responsibility of enabling the sector in emergency telecommunication. And where it sits actually in the structure of the industry, you find it has a responsibility even to bring a number of members together, a number of agencies together in a collaborative framework as we will look at, because at some point we've got to bring certain equipment into the country, and in an emergency circumstances, they might not be required to go through the normal procedures of clearances. And that's why we also talk about collaboration opportunities that regulators can play. And it can only play as a government and as a regulator of the sector that we're trying to make a case for in emergency preparedness. So I'll ask Dulip again to take us through this before I return for...
Okay, so today we are going to have a couple of group discussions, and we have a setup that is not really friendly towards a group discussion, yeah? So because of that, what we can do is, can we try to form groups of 5? Work with telecommunications industry to improve disaster preparedness and resilience in your country. So take it your country, how do you feel people can work together from the industry side, and from your different agencies, your regulators, your government can work together. So this can bring out examples of, right, challenges you face in your country and what kind of areas you feel that maybe government can support. Maybe you can be more coordinated. Because remember, we are at 3.4 as a country, so there's a lot that you can do actually. Yeah? Preparation, response, recovery, and mitigation. So we do know that it's important for us to prepare for emergencies. And the key thing for us is that all the various stakeholder groups must collaborate. We have the National Ambulance Service, we have the police, we have the military, immigration, the telcos, the regulators. There must be some collaboration amongst all these groups for it to be effective. And that's key for us. We do also know that there are laws already governing emergency situations in Ghana here. And as a matter of fact, the telcos have got, in part 12 of their license, they've been told that in the case of an emergency, the president can't have their facilities being used for services like that. So they know. But luckily for us, because we haven't had those cases in Ghana here, they are all things that are on paper. And it's important for us to see how we can lift them on paper in case something like that happens. What's the number? Yes. Still on preparedness. So we do also know that as part of the one of the things that we can do from the regulator side is that in case there's an emergency and then some MNOs have got their cell size down, we can switch on to national roaming, where you may be on MTN but can make a call to a Vodafone number, and vice versa. And in the case where you can also zero rate these roaming services, just for the purposes of trying to get things up. I mean, we had cases of in Dominica and Co where, I mean, after a cyclone, everything is flatly down. Emergency responders cannot even talk to each other, and that's key for us. And so once you zero rate national roaming, it gives people the chance to communicate, to reach out to emergency responders, and then services can then be offered to them. And again, how many of you recall a few years back, maybe 2 years back or so, there was some massive congestion of traffic on a Spintex Road. It affected traffic across Accra. How many of you remember that one? Apparently, there was a simulation exercise by the army in case there was a plane crash just along the motorway. Most of us didn't know that. I didn't know that until 2 days ago. So if we could have more of these exercises, it helps. But we know that in Ghana here, even fire stimulations in our office buildings, we rarely do them. A few folks that do them will actually even send us emails that there's a stimulation exercise coming up before they do it. And I don't know why you even do that in the first place. So it's important for us to coordinate all of these things to ensure that some preparedness level is reached before some of these things happen. One more minute. For recovery, I mean, it's important for us to see how technology can help us to do this. There are currently about 34 million or so mobile phone numbers in operation in Ghana here. That's more than the population of Ghana. How can we have the MNOs help us to send critical relief messages as and when it's necessary? How can they do this quickly enough? Our friends from Meteo Services often give us weather forecasts, and
let's commend them because lately they're quite on point. But how do we ensure that not a few folks get them on their WhatsApp platforms, but these go out to everybody else for free? Because these are information that are important to save life and property. So this, I guess, some of the stuff that we discussed as part of the group. Anything else I left out? We are good? Here's the last point. Yes, I just mentioned that. And again, so in some other countries, when things are flattening out, we reach out to ITU to give us satellite support. We may need that. Or it's possible that there's a bad situation in Ghana here, but our friends in Togo, Benin, and Nigeria can't come in to support us. And again, along the border towns of Ghana, I have a case where there's cross-signal interference. As much as that can be irritating, in the case of emergency, that could be quite useful. How do we ensure that we can activate some kind of roaming services for free between us and Togo or Burkina Faso to ensure that just when we need them, we can communicate amongst ourselves and amongst those in coordinating the emergencies? Thank you very much.
So for group 2, my name is Vitus Gijono from Etetico. We're trying to answer the question, how could policymakers and regulators work with the telecommunication industry to improve disaster preparedness and resilience in Ghana? So we believe that before we address this, we must first of all identify the current disaster that we've experienced and those we anticipate in the future. Then look at the frequency and rank them as such. Once that is done, we will identify the key stakeholders that can help us address the issue. So, and the telecommunication industry will support as such. So we are also looking at the stages. So we're talking about preparedness. So we also believe that as it stands now, the country has a policy for disaster management. So we would want that policy to be expanded by including all the stakeholders that have been identified, especially the telecommunication industry. So they will have to sit together and work on a business continuity plan and a disaster recovery plan. In doing so, they will be able to review the business impact analysis and know the things that will become bottleneck should disaster happens. So especially the things that the telecommunication industry would need to be ready during disaster. So we would want to take a case study like the flood that mostly happened in the northern region. So for the telecom industry, should flood happen the way it happens in the northern region, our generators will not work because they are consuming water. So we may obviously not have power. So that's a key challenge we will have during the period. So as part of the business continuity plan, we will expect that the country will support the telecom industry with these things that they've identified as things that they may not have in that particular scenario. So you see, you have multiple scenarios, so and they will have to prepare as such. So they would provide mitigation for all that. Then also, we expect that we have a good communication plan. That's from top to bottom. So should disaster happen, it has to be communicated for all to be aware of what is happening and the proper update given. Then when it comes to response, so now that we've expanded the policy by including the telecommunication industry, the response team should not be an ad hoc team. It should be a team that is set aside, trained from time to time, like he rightly said. They do simulations and so that they can gel. So during disaster, and they will be also conversant with the policy document. I mean, the execution of the disaster recovery plan. So that during disaster, that's not the time to think or to look for solution. They're just rolling out the plan that the thinkers has put in place. And communication will also happen in their group from bottom up so that all will be properly aware. Then we come to recovery. We are looking at, so people are being evacuated and temporary shelters are being set aside and all those things that are being happening. The team will be adequately prepared through the planning that has been done ahead. Lessons learned. That's one area that we think that should also be taken seriously. So at the end of the day, the team have to sit together. Maybe the policy formulators have to sit together and review how they have gone through the disaster and probably amend the document that they have put together with some correction. So basically, this is what we've also put together as a team. Thank you.
For Group 3, we looked at this from a strategy, a tactical, and an operational perspective. Okay. So from the strategy perspective, First of all, there needs to be a real look at the team currently that is controlling disaster recovery when it comes to the national level. So from a regulator, from a telco, from the stakeholders, from the policymakers, we need to look at this team and find out if we have the right people on board. That's number one, from a strategy perspective. Number two, we need to do a gap assessment. We need to, in order to improve, we need to know where we are and where we want to be. So we need to do a gap assessment. Number three, during this gap assessment, we'll be looking at things like the platforms that we have. So from our discussions, it came through that we had a platform, a short code 112 for our disaster response and all of that. So we need to look at that and then see if there are any shortfalls in that platform and all of that, and how we can improve upon that. Following that, we need to go into the tactics where on this platform, how this can dovetail into the telcos, how we can make use of the call centers of the telcos, how we can improve upon what we have currently in place. When it comes to the operations, that's when we look at the plans that we have. We look at the exercising that we have. We look at the simulations that we need to do to be prepared. Something also came to mind. On this platform that we have currently, we thought there is not much awareness on the platform currently. We need to do a lot more civic education on this platform. We need to publicize it for people to know and to be able to use it. Aside that, there needs to be more collaboration from the tactical end, where the stakeholders will be collaborating more. Areas around training among the stakeholders, we need to do that. So in short, this is what Group 3 came up with. Thank you.
Made very good use of the time. Okay, representative from Group 4.
Okay, Group 4 looked at this from the preparation, response, and the recovery. Yes, and in preparation, we all realize that, we need some funds to make some of these things happen. So we're looking at, there should be some kind of special fund set up by the policymakers, that you have money there, and during these times, you are now going to fall on, look for money from somewhere else to come and help you. And maybe the telecom operators as well can also contribute to that fund, so that when something happens, we all fall on that to solve our problems. Then there should be emergency communication equipment which are ready or procured in the country, such that when something happens, we can fall on that. It could be for the security services. I think we have something like that at the moment, but then it could be broader. Then, speak up here, okay. In looking at the response, I think we should lay down our plans and teams. So we should have all the institutions. Maybe we could have several groups comprising of different institutions. We all come together, we do our training and everything. So when there's a disaster, you know the chain of command, you know you don't have to wait for another institution to call you. You know the role you play when there's a disaster. Then when it comes to recovery, we're looking at, I think we've all spoken about emergency calls and all that. But in certain cases, we know maybe during a disaster, someone may not even remember some of these numbers to even make the call. They may have a phone, they may have service, but then they we should look at a way, maybe if it's a localized area and we can still provide some form of free communication services to that area, then communication can still go on. Because some people may never call the short codes, they will rather try to call a family member or someone around. Then we should rope in the media as well, because we have television and radio. They can do a lot of communication in that sense. And the telcos can also send out messages, alerts to people to inform them of exactly what is happening. I think, yeah, that'll do for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Group 5. Ken, this one is too close. Oh.
Charlie, Group 5, they said I should do it. Right, so looking at the question that was asked, we believe that the first thing to do is to convene that meeting so that we can put together the right group of people who need to be sitting at this table. And one of the critical people we thought that needed to come in was, apart from all of us sitting here, and NADMO that is also not here yet, is the Ministry of Finance and then Bank of Ghana, because the need for funding for the plan is really, really critical, because without funding, nothing else would happen. Then also we thought that the legislators also needed to come in, so parliamentarians were also critical in terms of, and then once we meet, we have to put together a framework that would be agile, and this framework would not just be static but would be agile, so that based on things that are happening, we would be able to be correcting it and amending it and making sure that everybody knows about it. And then critically, we need to do the lessons learned thing by listing out all disasters and crises that have happened in our country before, and because we are all seated at the table, what went wrong, what could we have done, what can we do, we can then discuss that. And also, once we are together, everybody would get to know the responses of every particular person. Bear in mind that the telcos would also be sitting really at the particular place, so that the things that we need to do when disaster happen, we can start planning them. Then we also talked about the fact that in terms of the emergency lines that we have, it's important that we will centralize them and just make sure that there's one common one, or even if there are multiple ones, they all get together to talk together to themselves. Then it was critical that we will put together a technology-based information sharing system, so that, you know, like typically like what Dulip made us do, where everybody else was sending information, but it was being gathered onto one particular platform and everybody was seeing it. So among the emergency response teams that we are putting together, and we believe that it should be a permanent team that starts from the national to the regional and then to the local levels, and there are linkages in them both vertical and across. So you have information coming from down to the top, as well as the top down, as well as across, so that lessons can be learned from different disasters and they will be centralized and passed on. We believe that should happen. Then we also believe that there should be a system like that involves the citizenry, so that we will also be able to share information with the citizenry, and then it would also be able to come up. And that should be put together. And the critical point we also raised was the role that the hospitals had to play. And then public hospitals as well. When these crises happen, you'll be able to commandeer them. And then with data that they have, you know where beds are, you know where you can transport them. Not that you transport the victims to one particular place and then you have to then go to another place when it happens. So we need to put that into place. And we believe that when that is happening and on a constant basis, these groups are working, would be able to manage and prepare for disasters and crises. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dulip. Yeah. So the Derek's time measurement went a little off when his boss presented. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. So a good round of applause for the entire team. I think you covered it. Ken, what do you think? They covered almost everything we thought they would cover, and mainly starting from preparedness, the disaster cycle from this side, and going into the stakeholders, looking at stakeholder management, areas where we need to get involved, plans we need to put in. And if you look at it from an overall perspective, it's a very large picture, yeah? Very large picture. But it's something that we can do, and something that, actually I was, last week I was in Pakistan, working with a similar kind of forum, working with the operators, helping them, because they are setting up their emergency telecoms coordination committee. So the operators are the key players sitting there, and they are looking at a very simple approach. what can we do internally in the industry, what can we do nationally, and what can we do with international stakeholders. So if you break it down like that and look at low-hanging fruits, easy wins, what can we do, and then look at short-term plans, and then look at long-term plans. Because some, it might need to go to, like you highlighted, to the parliament or the cabinet, and it might take a longer time, whereas implementing something that you already have, like coordinating among your short codes, is something you can quickly do. So maybe look at that. So yeah, thank you very much. I think that was really enlightening, and thank you for everyone for contributing very positively. So, yeah, Ken.
Yes. Let me just mention one thing, and actually it comes across a number of groups here. You might have realized even when we were discussing with colleagues, you realize that there is a good thinking or a good law that exists touching on a sector that you do not belong to. Yeah, and you might have realized it's been existent for quite some time, but given you do not work or you do not collaborate with that sector in anything, you've never come to know about it. And this brings us to the issue of collaboration that we will discuss later into details. That there is need really to come up with a collaborative framework on how organizations relate. And that's what the last group, Group 5, has just mentioned about even information sharing. You'll realize that for some of us who work in government, you'll realize that the way information flows, like had been mentioned by the first group, it's easier for it to come top down. Yeah, but bottom up, it's normally a challenge. But I'd also want to challenge ourselves about how we share it also horizontally. You'll realize at the center of a disaster, government plays a critical role. But they've got to leverage the resources of the private sector. But how do we share information across with the private sector? Is it really clear? Do we have a framework in that regard? That brings us to the role of policymakers again, that even in sharing information, there are laws that we've got also to abide by. And do they exist? Data protection framework. Someone is caught up somewhere and we would want to help rescue this person. Is with a phone. Does the law allow us to reveal information about such a person? Yeah, that brings us to the data protection principles that exist in these our countries. And this is where we challenge governments also to start thinking about this. How can they be relaxed at such a time of a disaster? All this brings issues about collaboration and partnership in the space of emergency preparedness. Thank you for that.
Sure, thanks very much, Ken. Okay, so I thought it'll be interesting to highlight to you some of the HCC activities, Humanitarian Connectivity Charter activities, that we encourage operators to do. Because, yeah, we know that we haven't signed as a country here, but it might be one of the activities. So it will be good for you to know, okay, these are the things that we encourage mobile operators to do in the country. So the first one is actually a very simple one, is we are talking about things that we can do in the industry itself, right? So that's why the industry, the first one is to have a SPOC. What is a SPOC? Is a single point of contact. So who is your single point of contact in your organization that would come up when it comes to emergency telecommunications? So this we feel is a very important thing when it comes to a larger structure like a MNO, because there are different divisions, and many often people say that things work if you speak to the right person in the MNO, right? So ideally it shouldn't be the case. You should have a proper SPOC who's designated to discuss the matters related to emergency situations. Yeah. So again, if you ask me, it shouldn't be one person also. It can be one department. It can be maybe 3 people who head the BCM. It can be various things. But important is you should designate them, and they should be the people who are answering these things, right? Second one is information sharing, right? So this comes to a little bit of a very sensitive area where After a crisis, we discussed in the morning, if something happens, a fire or a flood or something happens, the first thing people will come and ask you is, what is your coverage in this area? What are your towers? How? So we advise the operators to make sure that they have a proper information sharing system. It shouldn't be with the entire world. It can be with the regulator, for example, or it can be with the other partners in the committee, for example. So when you come to the committee after a crisis, first thing is you have a proper template, you fill it up and show, guys, this is our area, these are the areas we have coverage, this is where we don't have, so we need help for A, B, and C location. Third one is having a business continuity plan. So whether you can have a proper business continuity plan, have it, if you have your funding, you can get it assured or you can get it certified. But if you even don't have it internally verified, have it checked. More important than having a BCM is to have whatever system checked out consistently, right? You do your drill annually or every 6 months or every 2 years or whatever. But if you do your drill, before the drill, you send an all-staff email saying tomorrow there's a drill, you failed already, right? So that's the thing. Next one is working for a national shortcode. So this is something we advise people to do, mainly on a national level, emergency focused. You might have many shortcodes. Interesting story. So what happened was in Nepal, after the earthquake, after the floods in 2017, one operator went in and said, okay, we want a shortcode to identify people in their locations. They can call us on the shortcode, and then what you can do is we can work with the police and whatever, and connect them to this. Okay? So they said, okay, fine. They got a shortcode. So the shortcode was, I think, 9917 or something like that. So the interesting part is, if you are a competitor, like not a customer of the competitor, the number they had to dial was 69871659917. Tell me the number, what is it? No one will remember. How can a customer, when their entire things are lost and everything and they're under the flood, water is up to here, you are remembering 6984471599917, call and say, I'm in flood. It won't happen, right? So that's the thing. So importance of working it out. Yeah. So the second one is on collaborations or partnerships we can have. The first part of it is industry collaboration. So you said when you did our pulse in the room, one of the key things is bringing people together, right? So operators together. So that is one of the things that we advocate as a country. You speak to your operator, competitor, you plan, you work together. Second one is you work in the national system. That is my last point in the last interesting question, but we have a lot of discussions. Okay, so you can't do anything out of the national system. You have to work within the national system, right? So it can be that you don't like the national system, or you feel that the national system is only on paper. Fine, but you should be able to prove your coordinating committee within the national system. This is where we fit in, on paper and on practical. Otherwise, no. Okay? Simulation exercise. You work towards having simulation exercises. So when we say simulation, it can be a simple desktop one. The one that you did is a very, very simple one. Or it can be a complex one, practically on the ground. Right? So the Japanese operators, every year, they do a simulation with their entire customer base. Right? In villages, in cities. Right? Just to see how people would react, respond. Free data, right? That is also one thing you can do, right? And free SMS. So these are things that operators do quite often. They give these kind of time-limited offers to customers so that they can reach out to their families, they can work, and also have some sort of a text to donate campaign. You are familiar with text to donate campaigns? It's like, okay, if you you have 1,000 people affected in this area, if you want to donate some money, you can put the amount and text it to 6657, right? Something like that. And the money goes in, the operator collects, and so gives back. So interestingly, so in 2013, I was working for Dialogue in Sri Lanka. So there was very bad floods. So we had this small meeting like this, not this big, 4 or 5 people. We said, okay, what we could do, let's start a text to donate campaign. So it wasn't there in Sri Lanka. So we started it off. We had this meeting. I did a small paper, sent it out. The CEO signed, went to the regulator, right? So we had the meeting at 8:30 in the morning. It went to the regulator, say around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Regulator approved by 6 o'clock in the afternoon. By 6:30, message went entire country. Okay. So the same thing happened when I was working in Malaysia. There was very bad floods in 2014. So I again proposed to the operator, let's do that. So they said, okay, let's start. And they started. And finally, after 2.5 months after the floods, the message went, text to donate. Right? For them to implement this, it took 2.5 months. Why? Because people were arguing about how should the text come, how should we draft it, how should be sensitive to people who might get impacted, what are the privacy policies, right? Guys, there are people dying, right? But no, that's common. That's common. It can be, you can be either Sri Lankan or Malaysian situation in your crisis, right? So ideally, plan it before, have it ready, and then you just have to launch it, right? Okay, so all the ones are activities that we suggest that people do during crisis, right? Okay, and the next one, you wanted the photo? Yeah, go ahead. Because earlier one I had like done the animation, so they were gray. Yeah, today they have changed our lovely, what do you call, the projector, and this one is not my favorite. Don't get angry, okay? Okay, so these 3 slides are initiatives that mobile operators can do before, during, and after a disaster, right? And this is credit to be given to Dr. Hans. Dr. Hans was Dialogue CEO for the longest time, and he's an amazing brain in the mobile industry. So I had the opportunity in 2016 to sit with him for 45 minutes while he wrote what things can we do in a crisis, right? So he broke it down, most of them, so I have added, of course, over the years, but say 75% was what he thought in his mind and put it down in 45 minutes, right? So I'll go through, sorry for the small text, but I'll take you through. So before a disaster is broken down into 3 areas: early detection, inputs to the national disaster centers, and early warning. So what is early detection? This is what we discussed: sensors, IoTs, use mobile towers for weather monitoring, microwave links. You have heard of that, the microwave link can be monitored, and there are weather patterns that change. You can take it into your CDR information. So there are very micro ones, but if you monitor it for about 6 months, you can actually predict the weather. So that big data analysis, we talked about that. Okay. Input to national disaster centers, so mobile connectivity for regional centers. Remember I mentioned how the DHM in Nepal, in the regional offices, they don't have internet. So you connect them. Then tools to connect those locations. Okay. Early warning, a few things. First one is location based. Second one is social media integration. Third one is CAP. Are you familiar with CAP? Not that one. CAP is Common Alerting Protocol. So Common Alerting Protocol is a global standard on messaging on crisis situations. So let's say if you're familiar with the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, PWTC, that's where all the messages about tsunamis are generated from the Pacific side. Or you take any weather or crisis management system, their international alert would be sent in the same protocol, following the same information. It will follow what the crisis is, what is the frequency, what is the tendency of it happening, is it a red, is it a... So all this would be same across the world. So what we are suggesting is, if you're doing early warning system, follow the CAP protocol so it is aligned to all the global messages. The next one is looking at feature phone and smartphone. No, not only smartphone, because it might be a small penetration in the country you operate. Okay. So during crisis, as you can see, it's a lot. So the first one is looking at interactivity, coordinating between different teams, sharing data and updates, working with other industries. So this is making sure what we are doing here now, right? If a crisis happens, you can't work alone. You have to work with, for example, the power and energy, right? You have to work with them, understand what their impact is, because that may impact you, right? Second one, service restoration, right? Looking at alternative energy, prepositioning your equipment or fuel, new technology and tools that you can use, right? So we were talking about drones that are connected. You can go in. This picture here is SK Telecom, KT, Korea Telecom in South Korea. They have this system where they are using a blimp to fly in their network equipment, have it there flying, and so they believe they have justified that compared to a drone, it has a higher flying time. It can be more stable than a drone. So that's what they are saying. You can Google it. It's called KT Skyship, Skyship platform. Disaster resilient infrastructure, right? So you create, I was talking about a tower that can be category 4 resilient. Can we look at that? The next one is, of course, satellite or high altitude transmissions. Looking at satellite phones to be given to correct people, network or backup drones, or cows, or network on a bag, and there are various things that people are using. Next one is connecting emergency or response teams. That's a very important thing. Say your teams are going to respond to a crisis. Do they have connectivity? Do the operators have a special measure to connect them? Starting with the basic. Do you have a database with their numbers so you can alert them in one go, right? Does the National Disaster Management Center coordinate that information with the operator, right? So you can see that's a lot. And finally is looking at digital health applications and things like mobile beacons or monitors that you can use in the rubble. You can use those to detect mobile signals and see whether there's life. So these things are done. I think some operators like Vodafone already using them in some of their markets. Okay, so that was just to take you through some of the large number of things that mobile operators can do during crisis situations, preparedness. Okay, so now we open out to, like I said, we have about 20 minutes to open up the forum for your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, anything that you feel that we can do, right? What do you feel? Because I want to position the question correctly. We have, now we looked at what we think in the room. We think that everyone's focused. There is interest in all of us. And we want to start something that is focusing or targeting emergency response, mainly in the telecom area. So, my question to you would be, what do you think that we could do, right? What do you propose that we could do? How can we take these messages, learnings, examples, case studies forward in Ghana, in our context, and what kind of action do you propose that we do? And for this part of the conversation, we also invite our good friend Derek to join us so that maybe you can come here also, so that he can also take back some feedback and coordinate with you guys when we go forward. Yeah? So we start with Nedmo. Yeah?
Yes, I want to draw your attention to something, and we see how we can quickly plan for that. On the 19th of this month, my Director General sort of publicized that now or from that time onwards, NADMO is going to be using satellite in managing response of emergencies. This platform will be a very good platform that we can also go into it deeply and see how we can prepare ourselves for such a response. When we are talking about using satellite, it is as a result of UN Spider, United Nations platform for space-based information for disaster management and emergency response team that has mandated all countries under the United Nations to start exploring the use of satellite in managing distresses in their countries. Because it's like, as we are here, we all say, God is in heaven, and he sees everybody. He sees everything you are doing, even at the darkest place of your room. God is there to see. It's the same thing that we are trying to embrace. The satellites are somewhere far in the heaven that are like God and sees everything on the earth, on the planet. And whatever will be a trigger for any risk is seen by the satellite. And that is developed into things that we can quickly manage before it turns into disaster. So I am of the view that if we can design something that will help to project such thoughts of the Director General into this mobile phone transfer or platform that will help us all read what is going on, seeing our risks in our various places, and we can see the way to manage them before it turns to disaster. It will be a very welcome option that we shall be entering into it, because this century is now going scientific, and we must also move scientifically to be able to match up with everything that is going on. So sure. That is the question I'm putting onto you, whether we can have that facility helping us in Ghana.
Okay. So I would suggest what we do is, thank you very much for the question, and also highlighting that there is a new initiative coming up like that, and that could be very useful. But what we try to do is we'll try to not respond to each other, right? So that conversation will stay in one place. Rather than that, you can give your thoughts from your own agency or wherever you are coming from, and highlight, okay, some things that you want to do. And we are having a very nice lunch afterwards, where you can discuss specifics. You find the person who said the comment and said, hey, I want to have lunch with you. Go over lunch and discuss the points that you can do. Yeah, that's what we are going to do. Okay, who else is going to say? Yeah, over to you.
Okay, so if I understood your question correctly, what can we do going forward vis-a-vis all that we've done here to include MNOs, to the current arrangement we have to move the country forward? I think so. For me, I acknowledge that per the presentation and the research that has been done, the MNOs can actually support in disaster management. And with that said, I think it's important that all stakeholders, especially identifying whichever group that will lead this, be it Ministry of Interior or whichever group that we identify, must bring all stakeholders on board to actually develop this business continuity plan by identifying all the risk areas and actually know the impact. So once that is done, we should be able to assign responsibilities, especially to the MNOs, and know exactly what we require of them. They can bring all their issues on board, and the country or the responsible agencies should try their best to address those concerns in readiness for disaster. So I feel these are the things that must be looked at in order to move, because I believe that there is a plan. That's why NADMO is there. But to include the MNOs, it calls for rethinking. And rethinking meaning engaging all stakeholders, including those they've not thought of. And they can only do that if they really look at the risk register that they are going to come out with. Thank you.
Okay, you can pass it back.
I agree 100% with you. Yesterday, just after you have left here, I tried to call some few stakeholders and organizations to find out whether they have a situation or a plan or a policy that incorporates the MNOs. And to my surprise, none of them. Until this very meeting, I never knew that we could have the MNOs playing such a very vital role. And so I support what he just said. I think it is time that we consider the MNOs and the telecom communications as one of the very vital agencies to help in terms of disaster management, so that we can use their facility to reduce the risk of losing so many lives and also giving early warning to majority of personnel. So I believe that this platform, there is a need for us to coordinate and bring in all the telecoms and then the MNOs to make sure that when we are writing or we are drawing or coming out with a framework, they must be part of the policy making. It is very important. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
I hear you. Thank you very much. Moving forward. Yeah.
As a reflection, I have three issues. The first one is coming from a tower infrastructure company. I think that the whole training is based on the mobile network as a product. Even though we are important in the chain, we don't lay claim to that product. But the whole training is about the mobile network, I'm only asking if you can extend to see how we can also help in disaster management, because we have infrastructure in virtually everywhere. We need to go there before the mobile networks can operate. Yeah. And when you go into resilience, as we talked about yesterday, it sits within our operations, because we need to have a very versatile site. We need to have very good power systems before the network operators can actually work. So that actually sits within us. So if you can consider bringing in tower infrastructure owners as part of the training. And then the third issue dovetails into one aspect that you also mentioned, mobile for development. I think it's one initiative that's also, as a tower owning company, we have taken that on board. And I think that if you also bring us again into your issues, is something that you can see, because we, as I said, we have towers in the most deprived communities you can find, and we have gone ahead to say brought in policies, or let me say practices that can help these communities. Now we are developing what we call digital villages. We are sending like a 20-footer container to these areas. We're putting computers in there and getting the community people who can teach the kids how to use IT facilities. And also we have another pilot program with the Ghana Health Service to be able to give them power to keep their vaccines always refrigerated. So we have resources sitting in a lot of the communities that is already, we have taken the initiative to use it as a development tool. So if you can bring that on board also, I think it will help us as influencing policies around the world. It will help.
Sure. Well heard, well heard. Thank you very much.
Coming from the disaster management point of view, there are various phases of disaster management. We have the pre-disaster phase, the disaster and post-disaster, if we should simplify it. I see the telcos coming in, for instance, with the pre-disaster phase in instances like helping in the identification of hazards, and then situations that could degenerate into hazards, into potential disasters, or into disasters. And then in that line, we could look at apps, applications for that. The mobile devices come with sensors and stuff that could be harnessed for that. Perhaps also call detail records could also assist. I know it's a sensitive issue because of privacy issues, but if there could be some form of understanding in terms of complying with privacy and then ensuring that that could also be available for humanitarian reasons, you know. And then also during disaster situations, apps that could help in search and rescue operations could also be beneficial. And then post-disaster, we'll look at helping in restoring facilities back to normalcy. So from the disaster management point, I think if we could look at applications that serve the whole spectrum, that would be beneficial, you know. And I also want to mention that with the little experience I have had, you know, interaction with apps that have been created, they are mostly like prototypes. You know, they are developed in a project that lasts a few months. Then they are left hanging. So you will have several apps, you know, that are supposed to help in monitoring flood, that are supposed to be doing that, but they are not matured and they are no longer supported. So I would say that moving forward, it shouldn't just be to satisfy the requirements of getting a grant and then it is left hanging, because we have several such apps, even with NADMO, you know, around, which are no longer useful. Yeah.
You're done. I just wanted to piggyback on what gentleman from the tower company was saying. We at GFEC, as a Universal Access Fund manager, we have lots of resources that I think can be available in terms of emergency management in this country. We have a satellite hub currently that can be deployed. We can provide voice or data services within a matter of, I would say, maybe a day or within a few hours. We have a satellite hub and we have the VSAT that can always be transported to remote areas if they need be. So I think it's important that as a country we kind of realize or have an inventory of all the resources that is available and can be mobilized during emergencies. In addition to that, we also have 240 centers across the nation. Actually, we have centers in all the districts. And I think this year, the Ministry of Communication is building 100 more centers, especially the new districts that has been created. So these are all resources that are available and can be, used during emergency. And I think going forward, if there's any plans to have any national framework, as we discussed here, GFEC might have to be on the table to be part of that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Some of the organizations, agencies were committing already, saying we are willing, we are there, we can help, we can support. So I think that's the most critical or important thing that we need to do, right? And always remember that when we plan or set something up, It might not be the clearest, it might not be the shortest way, it might not be the easiest win that we can have in this journey. For example, we are working, I shared with you about DUNE yesterday, the Disaster and Emergency Warning Network, the early warning system in Sri Lanka. So when we started work in Haiti, we saw that there are very good similarities, and there's a good justification that we can try to implement DUNE in Haiti. So we spoke to the same IT company CEO, and he said he's willing to give DUNE free of charge to Haiti so that they can try and implement it there. So we started the conversation early last year. So the initial conversation was, yeah, it's given free of charge, but you need some things to set it up. Like you need a computer, you need to customize it, you need to have a center where you place it, so that kind of thing. So there was a budget requirement. So we had to go from early last year, look for donors who can fund. So found the donor, and then we had to sign the contract. Then it has to go to the ministry. Ministry has to sign the contract. So it took, now it's gone almost 14 months, and now we are ready to start work. So these kind of things, although we are talking about life-saving solutions, might take time to implement. So you have to keep your patience, you have to be continue with doing this, and you can't expect social media results. You know, social media results is when you put a picture on, say, Instagram or Facebook, you want people to like it. If there's any support, any information, anything that we can provide from other operators, connect you to some of the other operators, solutions that we mentioned, is something that we are very happy to provide. So before I go into final, anything from you, Derek, before we hand over to Ken for a quick DI run?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, mine is very brief. First of all, this was meant to be a side event, not really related to the workshop that started yesterday. But I discussed it with the chamber, and he felt that we could also share just a brief about what we do in digital identity, which is one of the programs that we run within Mobile for Development. And so digital identity, as we had said, is a program that we run within Mobile for Development, and it's also funded by the same donors, DFID UK, DFID, and some of the things that we are looking at is actually building a digital profile of the users of mobile telecommunication services, because we are trying to move away from paper-based documentations that we move with, and so we are digitizing the ID attributes of users. And so we've been having policy discussions along these lines in terms of the messages that we give to governments, and the research pieces that we do, and even the engagement that we have with mobile operators. And some of the areas that we've been working on is sharing the best practices that we see across various markets. And our role normally is to bring these stakeholders together. For example, we are doing a number of initiatives in Africa. Just next door in Nigeria, we are looking at also at digitizing the identity, and even rolling out, extending IDs to rural-based folks who are not really near the enrollment centers, so that they could be issued with government-issued IDs, which they normally say it's a challenge because of distance. But looking at it in the background of the reach and the mobile coverage, we find that we can ride on that platform to extend this. And therefore, at global level, we also do a number of things. What I've mentioned is in country, but at global level, we do the policy research pieces that inform how we go forward in the in-country initiatives. So these are some of the research pieces that we've worked on, and they're available online. And they talk about the proof of identity and the challenges that they face while proving identity, so that they access services that are offered by government and even the private sector.
And that's why we are trying to move towards a digital-based ID so that you do not have to carry the paper-based IDs all the times. You'll realize this, especially in the African countries, we've got a number of IDs. Yeah, and we are trying to marry all this together so that we build them in a digital platform so that you do not work with a separate number when you want to be attended to by a medical officer, or you want to renew your driving license, or you want to access services from the national social security bodies. And all these are summarized in the research pieces and the reports that we've done that are available online. So this is how it works, especially for digital ID. First of all, it's the digital ID like I have mentioned. And then the second one, for it to be utilized, you've got access to mobile services. Yeah, and this is where we are making a case for the telcos and particularly the mobile technology providers, how users of mobile services can enjoy a number of services that government and private sector provides based on the resources that the mobile service providers have. And this is in a number of sectors. For example, you can see the birth registration. We are doing we are exploring how this can be employed in birth registration for children when they are born, and even in the SIM registration. These are the KYC requirements that operators need, and even the banks call for when they want to extend services to you. And even the e-government platforms, the services that the government offers based on this technology. And we've also got the social cash transfer programs. We are doing some in Zambia, and these are social grants that are extended to senior citizens and even the widows, and still they face the challenge of identifying themselves, proving to these donors that they are really who they are, so that these services are extended to them. So this is all within the border of digital transformation strategies that governments across the world are driving. So I've got a number of policy engagements that I wanted to share with you that we are doing. And first of all is in Nigeria. This is where we've brokered a private-public partnership amongst a number of players, the MNOs and central banks, the World Bank, and the National ID Authority that issues the ID, because they would want to extend IDs to people who are not, who face challenge in getting the paper-based ID, but then they've got the funds. How can we explore how to ride on this platform to have this? This is a summary of just what we do. For example, even in Rwanda, this is within the broader digital transformation strategy that they are doing, and we are also exploring the same, because the services that they offer still require identification to prove who you are. And World Bank, we've brought World Bank on the table, and they are discussing it currently with the IT Infrastructure Authority and the National ID Authority on how we can go about this to achieve their goals. And one thing that we are looking at are the policy opportunities, looking at the laws that they have, and even the policy challenges that they have. And therefore, we share also best practices from other markets and see how we can also look at changing the policy thinking of the government so that we achieve the same goals. Uganda is doing the same thing like Rwanda. It's only that instead of World Bank now, we've got UNICEF. And then the focus is on digital birth registration. Ghana also, we are exploring with the operators, Vodafone Cash and Tigo Airtel is also on board, and we are discussing economic ID, but in the context of a cocoa farmer, just an ordinary small-scale farmer who wants to access financial services from a bank, but does not have the documentations to prove that the transactions that he's been doing really speak to the qualifications that are needed by the banks to access the mobile the financial services. This is also, we've made significant progress and we're still working on it. Another one that we are doing in DRC is, in DRC actually the ID penetration is much, much lower than the mobile penetration. Actually in DRC, I think it's only around 32% of citizens who qualify for national IDs that have got the IDs. But at the same time, the KYC requirements by central banks and the mobile network operators are so tight that you cannot access these services without these IDs. So what we are looking at is how to extend these ID services to them, again riding on the mobile platform. It brings a number of players. We've got Central Bank, World Bank, and the ID authority, and also the authorities in charge of IT infrastructure. We've got another program here called CHOGAM. CHOGAM is Commonwealth Head of Governments Meeting Initiative. And this is looking particularly on the girls and the women who've been disadvantaged for a very long time. There are certain markets that we operate in that we've realized that a woman cannot get an ID and cannot access even mobile services or own a SIM card in her own name. And so we are looking at the policy challenges and what we can do about this. More particular is Pakistan that we have. We've also got a little challenges in Sierra Leone, and majorly also it's about refugees in Uganda. That for you to register a SIM card in Uganda, you can only register it under the name of the head of the household. Yes, and so this is a challenge because some operators also insist that you can only register SIM card, you can only use the documentations of the head of the household once. And therefore, if you've got a family of around 6 who are qualified to own a SIM card in their names, you can only have one SIM card. So those are some of the policy pain points that we are looking at with the governments in this program. Another one is the Zambia. This is one that is led by the World Food Program and the Food Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And it's more on cash handling challenges. Again, it's about identifications because you cannot tell whether this person is the person who is really qualified for these social grants. And we thought that given the robust KYC requirements that mobile operators do, and even the databases that they have, we can ride on the same to help them manage these challenges. This one we are doing with the Ministry of Social Services that manages the social grants. Smart Zambia is the e-government of Zambia. It's in charge of the e-government infrastructure. And the lead agency is World Food Program. And GSMA is the one convening all this. Another one is in Myanmar, and this is about civil registration and vital statistics. It's also under discussion. Sri Lanka, we've got the health ID, and this is about moving with giving the user control of his data. For example, you've realized that today, if you're attended to by a doctor at Aga Khan, tomorrow you go to a different hospital, you'll be carrying documentations, paper-based documentations to explain to the other doctor what actually the other doctor said about you. And sometimes these are not things that you can say by word of mouth because you know how doctors write and even how they communicate. So we are also just coming up with a profile, your health profile in a digital environment so that you just give the doctor access and he can access the information as was entered or commented by the previous doctor. Chad is the same. This is digital birth registration. Health ID is just like in Kenya, is like the one in Sri Lanka. And then in Somaliland is another one where access to IDs by women and girls is a challenge. And therefore, what we are trying to explore so that we identify them is to use voice biometric. And we felt also mobile can play a role in this. So this is briefly what we do. And some of the policy areas that we are discussing is how to establish this database, an inclusive one and accessible one that is queryable by these agencies. and one that can also drive demand and adoption of these services, so that the governments and the public sector can move their services online. The other one is just the data protection frameworks around them, because we realize a number of countries have mandated SIM registration. But the concern of the users is whether they are, they've got recourse in law when this data is misused. So like in Africa, around 50 countries have mandated SIM registration, but I think only around 50% of them have got personal data protection laws in place. Yes, and then at the end of the day, we want industry participation, as many as possible stakeholders to be brought to the table to discuss this, so that it's owned by everyone in the society. Yeah, so that there is industry participation to drive. Oh, sorry. We are trying to have everyone, all players on board, so that there is an all-inclusive participation by the players, so that everyone owns into this initiative. That's what we mean by industry participation. Otherwise, thank you so far. It's been good, and I thank you for your time. And I will welcome questions, comments, and probably.
Only 2 comments or questions?
Okay, so I'd like to know what's the governance around this digital ID, in terms of controls, in terms of standardization, in terms of sustainability of this. What's the governance in place? Because currently Ghana, it's been one of the challenges with identification we have in place. That's why we want to put in place one national data ID database, so we can validate, we can verify, and then there will be controls around how it is updated, how it is maintained. So with a digital ID, what are the governance?
Yeah, my question is around the use of the SIM registration to build the digital IDs. I think you kept going back and forth with that. I'm not sure, I'm not clear about whether we are saying that we can use the data we have during SIM registration to build the digital ID, or is the other way around? Which one comes first? I mean, I guess you have to have the ID before you can buy the SIM card, right? So if you have from the telcos, how do we build? Are you going to use the data of the telcos to build the digital IDs? Is that what you are suggesting?
As for us is to broker this relationship. We got to identify the partners of and also the role that they play. For example, in Ghana, we've got an ID authority, right? And it's the one that issues the ID. Yeah. For us, we also have our members who are the MNOs, and we try to set standards. For example, it has to be technology neutral, and even for the service providers who would want to plug onto this, yeah, their system must be interoperable with the other one, that the ID profile is built. And that's where standardization comes in. We also discourage vendor lock-in, yeah, so that at the end of the day, there is also a need to build this and also load some other services onto this. Do we have to have just a vendor who closes it in so that when he moves, we've got to look for him so that we'll load other services on top of this? So there are standards that we've set. We've got guidelines around this. I do not know whether it addresses. Is it? Yes, that's one. But I want to come to, the question was about, do we start from ID, the government issued ID, to do SIM registration or the other way around? The SIM registration is actually to access mobile services. Like we've said that over 50 countries in Africa have mandated SIM registration so that you access mobile services. Yeah? But of these 50, over half of them do not have personal data protection laws in place. And therefore, in as much as you give your data, you voluntarily offer your data so that you access these mobile services, you do not have recourse in law once the data that you offer or voluntarily give is misused. But now to build the digital ID, it's about starting it from the foundation. And this is the legal ID that has been issued, which is the foundational ID. Then we've got functional IDs that we load onto it to access different services. It could be in immigration, it could be in health, it could be in accessing education or the social grant. So it's tied to the foundational or the legal ID. Yeah? That's actually the basis, but you do not have to work with all this documentation to access services. It could be a code that you enter and you give the other person access to your profile, but still they are tied. Does it? Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ken. Just to tie it into your question. So I think that for Ghana, where we find ourselves, or the context within which we find ourselves, is that you already have over 40 million plus SIM cards already registered. You are having a challenge as to whether some have been registered with the right data or not with the right data, and it's justified.
I thought this narrative was that build on the data that the telcos have from this SIM card to build the data IDs.
Okay.
The question is whether those SIM cards were registered authentic.
So I agree. I think for me, or even for us in this industry here, I think the proposal or what we've been proposing is that government should do the national ID, because the government mandated SIM registration program cannot take center stage as the national ID. People were asked to register SIM cards with 5 different kinds of IDs, i.e. passport, drivers, national ID, which I still haven't gotten since I started the program in 2008, NHIS, and then there's a voters. That makes it 5. Now, somebody, aside the national ID, which hasn't been well done since the last 11 years, somebody might genuinely not have any of these passports. Maybe I like herbs. I'm not going to the hospital, so I don't need an NHIS. I'm not traveling. I don't have money. I'm not traveling. I'm not buying a car, so I don't need a passport. I don't need a driver's license. But I want to be able to communicate, and you're asking me to register. And the challenge for the channel guys in the street and the guys who are in the shops is that they can't do anything to the card you show to them, just like the way a policeman will stop us in traffic and say, okay, let me see your license. He checks it. Okay. He checks if it's expired. That's all he needs to know. It's not expired. Carry on. The bank guy will take your card and then he would take it, do photocopy, and they'll remove the money for you. Recently, I know some platforms like G-Vive and the rest came in where we've been using like the voters to check if we can do some validations and that, but there's still a huge gap. And then also you remember the DVLA issued a statement, I think 5 years ago, when they said that 40% of the SIM cards are, 40% of their database are fake licenses in the system. All these licenses, probably some might have been used to register SIM cards. The infamous EC declaration that NHIS people should be deleted off the database because political parties were even having a disagreement over whether these cards were legitimately created to have access to be registered into the voters ID. So we've created a system where different institutions are doing different registrations, and before you know, then there's a leakage and somebody can easily get these cards done within a few seconds overnight, given to some family and friends, and then it creates a problem. But we are also on the receiving end as a service provider who is supposed to register, but you can't validate all of these cards that are popping up in the marketplaces where we are selling these cards, and that's the challenge we have. So I think that we are also asking, we keep continually engaging government to get the national ID done. Once it's done, and they say it's done, then we can say, okay, all our customers come and do validation. Validate, and then we can now tie the national ID to your SIM card, which has been the original plan, or basically what the LI 2211 the SIM registration law, what is asking for is basically saying that we should use the national ID to be the the backbone card that should be used to do the validation. So that's the situation. You want to say something?
I just want to add on 2 issues. First of all, the digital ID is not replacing the legal ID that is issued by government. Yeah, there is no replacement. The digital ID is built around the functional areas. Yes. And the other one is that we are trying also to talk to governments, also to change just their thinking in terms of policy, to move from the capture and store model of the way when you buy a SIM card, the operator only call for your details and they store, but they do not have a centralized database where they can validate whether the details that you've given are really authentic. Yeah, so we are moving towards capture and store and towards capture and validate from capture and store. And we've realized even in the countries where there is capture and validation kind of model, the utility and even the value of the SIM card is much higher because trust is built within the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. A round of applause for him. And then also, the point you made on the digital ID, I think the other thing is that the fact that as a mobile industry, we are continuously interested in being able to verify the customers that are on the network, where they are, who they are. It's very critical because you are bringing out, you're churning out different services and products on a day-to-day basis, like mobile money and the rest. It's in our own interest to be able to ensure that we are dealing with human beings we can verify, because it also enhances a lot of trust, and then it reduces the fraudulent activities on the network and stuff like that. There was one question that came in during the time that Dulip was speaking. I think the question from Nadmo about data sharing. I don't know if we're strong on the fact that we can have a governance process around anonymizing the data that we can release based on we agreeing the standards or what we are releasing, so we have data protection on the table and have that conversation as well. So thank you very much for your participation, your resilience in the crisis management encounter and all that conversations that we've had from yesterday. It's been very exciting, and thankfully we're bringing it all home. Like I promised, I'm a bearer of good news all the time. And so we're done technically and officially. We are done with the program. We'll just do some closing remarks. We're going to get Engineer Kenneth Ashigbe, who is with the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, to do the closing remarks. Then I can go and bring my certificates while he's talking. Then we can wrap this up.
Right. Thank you very much, Derek, and thank you very much, all of us, for these 2 days. And I believe that this should be a beginning of some change that is going to happen. Fortunately for us, we know that there's a lot of activity already going on in that space, including the setting up of the Presidential Commission and all, looking into this. So one of the fundamental things I would propose is that we'll all be given a memory stick that has the presentation on it. So it's important that when we go back into our institutions, we engage our institutions to be able to determine whether we are the right people to come. But I would suggest very heavily, and I will try and engage the leaderships of all your organizations, that those of us who are here, who have gone through the training, who have gone through the conversation about Ghana's plan, we form a core of that group that we are talking about in terms of that collaboration. The interesting thing is that in our discussions, we've also realized that there are other people that we should bring onto the table. So the team from data protection would have to come, Bank of Ghana would have to come, Ministry of Finance will have to come, the team from GRA, would have to come, various people would have to come. So we'll look at that and then be able to work with what is already happening, so that we can all be on the table in working towards getting a digital disaster response framework for Ghana, and then get a system that is working based on all the things that we've spoken about. But I would have to say that we're very, very grateful to all of you for coming. I'm glad that NADMO also showed up today when we're discussing the Ghana project, and so that, because they also play a very critical role in what we do. And it's also good that we've all been here, we've heard what individually, we do in our own organizations, and the fact that we have pockets of best practice sitting, in our individual organizations. But unfortunately, because we have not been talking to ourselves, we have not been able to deal with the challenge of disaster and crisis management. My only prayer is that June 3rd is too close to us. So we are asking God that He holds the heaven so that we'll be able to put our systems in place. Because nature has a way of playing interesting pranks on us. Duly mentioned the issue of Mexico, that 30 years, exactly on the day, the disaster struck again. But fortunately for them, when it happened, they were ready. But if you go back and read, graphic is where I work, so I can tell you, the example of some of the disasters that have happened in the same places, it might not be the same times, but even as they happen, the disaster tends to increase the more. I'm hoping that this conversation that we've started today would be a beginning to the end. It is said that hope is not a business strategy. It is what we will do. So we should move beyond the hope and actually put systems in place and begin to start the conversation, the meetings, and all of that. And with the commitment from the very top, from the presidency, I'm pretty sure that the time is right for us to be able to get this thing done. And we would all work towards ensuring that we will do it so that posterity would say that when we gathered here on the 27th and the 28th and 29th, based on this whole earthquake thing that is happening, we're able to form that movement that led Ghana to change the story that has been our story from time immemorial. The commitment I would want to say is that from our members, both the MNOs and the tower companies, we are really committed to ensuring that we can work together with all of you. We know we have commitment from the BNC, Bureau of National Communication, from the NCA, our regulators, and then also from the Minister of National Security. So I'm pretty sure that with what we've seen the President do, the commitment is already there for us all to work together. And we would hope that we would have your support, like we've seen in these 2 days, where very busy people, but you've been able to take time off to come and let us do this. Because like in any project, if you spend 75% of your time planning, you find out that execution becomes flawless. And as was said with the example of the loons, it took them, 4 weeks to be able to connect. But when they sat down in the peacetime, it was just a few hours. So let's ensure that we would spend a lot of time planning so that it will not be just disaster response, but even we'll get to the point where we can use technology to predict when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and then we can put systems in place to ensure that when it happens, maybe the worst will be people's dresses getting wet, but we will not have people losing their lives unnecessarily. So in that regard, I would want to thank very much Dulip and Kenneth. We've started this conversation with GSMA for a very long time, and really we've been able to get this done. We are very, very grateful for sharing these insights with us. And we are hoping that as we start our project, we'll be able to have you work with us, bring knowledge from other places to refine what it is that we do. We also want to thank our regulators, the NCA, for helping put this thing together from the point when we started thinking about it. The very first meeting we had with the NCA Director General was when he took this over and pointed us to the National Security Minister, and then also thank the Minister for National Security, and then the BNC. And then for all of you, the organizations, for once we reached out to you, showing interest and coming. We want to thank our colleagues from the media and everybody who has made this memorable occasion. Unfortunately, the job has just started. So it's not as if this is a closing remark. It is now an opening remark for a long journey ahead of all of us. And I pray we would all be able to collaborate to ensure that we can make Ghana a better place. My only prayer is that because we're dealing with a lot of parastatals, and you know the way we become every 4 years, the cycles that take place. I pray that when you go back, the information will be disseminated so that everybody would know. So that no matter the change, if the next wave blows, and you are made a boss elsewhere, at least still the knowledge will be in the organization. It's not necessarily that they will take you off. They can promote you or move you to another place, and then, so let's make sure that we can pass the information on. That is why we are not giving you paper, but we're giving you the information on a memory stick. And the only caveat is that you can't use it for any commercial thing. If you're going to use the presentation, use it for what it is that we're doing, knowledge sharing. Thank you all very much, and God richly bless us all.
Thank you very much, Ken. You want to sit? Thank you very much, Ken, for your very good remarks in closing us. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that is why some people have not left yet, but it's good. So we've been having some conversations at the back. We had our friends from NADMO come in today, so I was telling my colleagues, should NADMO get a certificate? Okay, then I said, okay, they have filled an evaluation form and they've participated in the simulation exercises. So technically, if those who came yesterday got A, NADMO got B+, they still will pass. A round of applause for NADMO. Okay, so we'll give out, we'll mention your name, you come up, and then between Ken and Dulip, they'll do the presentations, and then we'll take some photo ops. And then afterwards, we'll just appreciate we'll just nudge some of you, so we could just ask a few questions of you, or basically questions surrounding your expectations being met and what you've taken out of the training program in just a minute before you go for lunch, and then we'll leave. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start. So I'd like to invite Ken. So we have something from the chamber and all the other partners. We have a sash we wanted to give to Dulip and Ken. So Dulip, if you don't mind, a round of applause for them. You need a shot. You need a shot. Dulip, you need a shot. This is called Kente. Yes. It can withstand any type of disaster. Trust me, I know that for a fact. Okay. All right. Round of applause for Dolip, and then we invite Mr. Ken Okonko. Ken is African, he might relate, but he doesn't have some. Yes. Ken, you don't have it in Kenya. If you wear this to the airport, when you get down, Uhuru will call you for a meeting, I promise. Round of applause for Ken. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll do the group photo and then we'll go dashing for lunch. Lunch this time will not be by the sea. We decided to keep you a little bit more intimate, so we'll go to the Golden Dragon restaurant down there. I'll take you when we're done.
The past 2 days has been very exciting. The training has really opened up our eyes to actually teach us how we can deploy the infrastructure and the investment that has been made in the telecom industry to disaster management. So all in all, it's been very refreshing and a very good improvement in terms of how much we are learning to deploy these facilities that has already been built.
So this training section has been very, very good coming from the METS organization, because then it helps me when I get my forecast and I see where the disaster looms. I know it's not going to sit under my desk, but it will also go up and my aim has been achieved. So I think it is a wake-up call, and I hope it will go on. It will not be stuck somewhere, it will go on from here. Thank you very much.
My name is Vitus Gijono. I'm from Airtel Tigo. I'm head of operations governance. I want to say that the 2-day workshop has been an enlightening one. It has brought to bear the role of the MNOs in disaster management. And we would want to acknowledge the chambers, the Ghana Telecom chambers, for bringing this to light. And I think the MNOs would be delighted to support the National Disaster Recovery Team to actually achieve their goals. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Lani Okulu from the National Disaster Management Organization. This workshop has been very, very educative, and this will go a long way to boost and enhance communication in disaster management. In time of disaster, communication is a very, very big problem which needs to be managed accordingly. And with this workshop, I know we are on the right path to managing communication in disaster management. Thank you.
As Superintendent of Immigration, Elvis Owusu, this is the first time I'm attending such program, and as we all know, communication plays a very important role. So I'll take it upon myself and then educate some of my colleagues so that in times of disaster, you'll be able to assist in helping the country. Thank you.
My name is Chief Superintendent Theodore Kwaku Mlomenu, alias Red Ninja, from the Ghana Police Operation Department, specifically the National SWAT Commander. I've enjoyed this program because telecommunication play a key role in managing disaster as well as even managing crime in this country. I must say that with the partnership of even the MTN, a facility has been made free to the Ghana Police Service that has championed a lot of tracking of criminals. So with this particular program, in terms of using telecommunication in managing disaster in our country, will go a long way. And I believe the knowledge that I've gained here will go a long way, and I'm going to make sure I disseminate it to the other commanders in the region, as well as the district commanders and the junior most within the service, so that together we'll understand the effective role that communication plays. Thank you.
This past 2 days, training with GSMA, Bureau of National Communications, National Communications Authority, and the Chamber has been very fulfilling and very fruitful discussions from all stakeholders, ranging from NADMO, Information Services Department, the Immigration, the Police, the Fire, the Meteorological Services, and all other key stakeholders. It's very good because one of the key things that I picked up was when we asked the question, what do we see as priority and we used the Mentimeter platform, and everybody was talking about collaboration, which came out very strongly. In disaster management, the key thing is collaborating to be able to make very good use of all the resources and the pockets of excellence that we see from different institutions across our ecosystem. So we're going to look at this feedback. We're going to move into the next phase, bring in a lot more other stakeholders who could not make this, particularly look at the data protection team, bring them in, and we'll be able to establish some greater plans to make Ghana not just disaster responding, but disaster prepared to be able to handle any issues that we might foresee in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Divisional Officer Grade 2 Irene Saki. This 2 days workshop has been, it's very important to us as an organization where I am coming from, because we've been responding to disasters, and at times collaboration is not there with the other agencies. So in fact, this workshop has taught us to be collaborated with all the agencies that are involved in responding to disasters, and also it is also imperative that we are bringing in the telecodes to help in enriching us with information in case of disaster. Thank you.